Hello there everyone, welcome back to another video about a children's trading card game, another One Piece card game video. Today we're going to be talking about the PPG case tournament that took place over this last weekend. This was quite a large scale event with 140 players, large number of players. It took place over a long day, and I believe it was pretty much just the Bandai regulation, so best of 1 through Swiss and then best of 3 in top cut. Which I believe was a cut to top 16, though it's seeming like our treasure cups would be a cut to top 8. But regardless, this was a pretty good indication, I think, of what we might expect players to be taking to treasure cup, because a case is currently worth about $2.5 grand. And that is a lot of money, and so I think a lot of people would have been taking this very, very seriously and not really trying to hide anything. So today we're going to analyze the stats from the event, which I think is the most useful thing we can do, and then after that we're going to go through some deck lists, but that's less important, I think, rather than the stats. So let's go and have a look. So this is just nicked from the PPG thing, and then the maths is coming, as you can see there. So total breakdown of the event here, we can see Green Kid taking up a quarter of the event, Purple Kaido not much further behind, same with Red Zoro. And then lagging noticeably, but not significantly behind, we have Law and then Blue Doffy at relatively similar counts. And then behind them, we have got Red Luffy, and then a sort of further tier below is pretty much everything else. Like pretty much everything else combined is on about the same player count as less than Blue Doffy. So I think this is, I would say, a relatively unsurprising chart. I think a lot of people are still on that blue copium. A lot of people playing blue purple crocodile, I think, were wasting their money, to be honest. That deck is not capable of taking down an event like this, but I respect it. There are a few comments saying I was underrating purple crocodile in my tier list video, which you can check out there. You should watch it. I think it's really, really good. But I don't think I was, as we can see here. I think in terms of any actual surprises here, my biggest surprise is how underrepresented I feel Red Luffy is. I feel Red Zoro is a little overrepresented for how good it actually is. I don't think it's that good to be seeing this percentage of play. Green Kid being top dog, I think, is unsurprising. It is it is consistent. It is very powerful. It has very few bad matchups. And it is fundamentally the strongest leader effect in the game, and it can just steal wins. And yeah, so I think it being the most played is unsurprising. Kaido, I think, seeing a little more play than I was necessarily expecting, but I know it's very popular in the North American format, so there is that. And yeah, Law, honestly, where I would expect, I think, you've got to be pretty confident in your skills as a player to want to be taking Law. Otherwise, I feel like if you're a little less confident, then I would lean towards Green Kid. So yeah, my only real surprise here, I think some of that Red Zoro should have been pumped into Red Luffy, but otherwise this is about what I would have expected from an event of this scale. Let's look at the top 16. So I think obviously this is going to be much more interesting, and we see Zoro getting absolutely demolished from one of the biggest slices of the pie all the way to one of the smallest. Red Luffy on a big glow up, going from one of the smallest slices of the pie to a real noticeable one here. Green Kid dominating this top cut with 6 out of the top 16, but Red Green Trafalgar Law at 4 out of this top 16, 25% very cleanly. Kaido also doing relatively decently. So I think it's no surprise that these are the decks that did well. I'm not at all surprised that Doflamingo did not make it here. I really don't think it's on the same level as all these decks. And you'll notice as well, if you go and watch that tier list video, spoiler, these are all the decks I said you could take these to an event. I won't say in more order, because go watch the video, it's doing quite well. But yeah, this is, as well, the fact it is kind of in the order as well, I said. So I think that's really funny. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk some stats. So what I've done here is I have taken the leader. Apologize. Oh god, you can't see the leader. I'll just move this over here. So what I've done here is I've taken the leader in the column here. Probably should have made this slightly easier to read, but there we go. I've taken the leaders here, and then I've taken the representation figures. So this is the number of players playing each one, and then I've calculated a representation percentage. Then I took the top 16, and then we have a top 16 percentage. But then I think the most important stat here is this conversion percentage. So let's start off with the representation stats again. This is sort of just going over here and basically doing the maths properly, because there was a lot of rounding here. Top 16 percentages, again, we've already seen those, but just having that here to be exact. the conversion percentages. This is what we're here for. So let's start off with the worst conversion. That's purple Kaido. Oh, sorry, the red Zoro. Red Zoro, absolutely abysmal conversion, and I really don't think this should be surprising, because fundamentally, if you're playing red Zoro, you should be comfortable with the fact that you are pretty much submitting yourself to the whims of whatever RNG happens to take you. Are you going to see your outs to certain things? Are you going to see your aggression? Is your opponent going to open a cam that counters you? Fundamentally, because of how early Zoro plays, it's much more vulnerable to that kind of RNG than something like Red Luffy. Because Red Luffy plays a lot more in that mid to late game rather than the early to mid game like Zoro does, it just has more time to see its pieces, it has more time to get set up, and that's why I think we saw Zoro just absolutely abysmal performance. But that will not stop players taking it. I think, you know, it is the easiest deck in the game, absolutely, and fundamentally it can beat everything. It's not like it can't. You just need to get pretty lucky, though I think if that's the strategy you're going for, I would personally always go for Kaido over Zoro. Next in the conversion rankings, we've got Red Luffy at... sorry, we've got... yeah, Red Luffy. No, sorry, it is Purple Kaido. I was reading the wrong one. We've got Purple Kaido at 10% conversion. So you've got a 1 in 10 chance as a Kaido player to make it to top cut going off these stats. To be honest, if I had to pull a number out of my arse and guess something, this is about what I would have gone for. That really does seem right. You know, when you've got to be basically seeing your Onigashima pretty much every single game, you're not really functioning without it. And then you also have to not get rushed down, and you've got to actually get your whole game plan going. I think this makes sense. And as I said, you know, as I have been saying, Purple Kaido absolutely can take the event if they see everything they need to say. It all comes down to see everything they need to see, and it all comes down to that, right? Fundamentally, they see the cards or they don't. I know that's true for everything, but it's true for Kaido in particular, and I would always be taking Kaido over Red Zoro. Now, what is, I think, most expected, Green Kid, 17.6% conversion. This was always going to be relatively low because of the sheer quantity of Kid players playing the deck. That as a natural result, you were just going to be playing the mirror at least once or twice. And, you know, that mirror is roughly 50-50. You can absolutely get very good at playing that mirror, and you can drive your win rate up, but, you know, I imagine a lot of players were just... You know, it just kind of came down to that, you know, did I see the right pieces? Did my opponent know how to counter me? Did they do this, do this? A lot of players are not actually main decking the outs to the mirror match as well. In a meta as dominated by Green Kid, you really need to be doing that. So if you don't know what they are, go and learn the game, because I've seen a lot of YouTubers saying that the cards are bad, and I think that's very interesting. But anyway, yeah, so this is, I would say, fairly expected as a drop. So obviously an increase in representation in the top 8, but like a huge number of players getting left by the wayside. 21% red-green lore, and I would have expected this to have the best conversion, because it has the fewest number of players of all the really good decks. Well, not fewest, obviously, but it's got a relatively small number of players going into the event playing it, but you can be quite sure that all the players who are playing red-green lore are good, because they're not going to take the deck if they are not very confident in the fact that they are good players. And you see that borne out in these results here by taking a quarter of the top cut, even though they are only 13% of the actual player distribution. So yeah, a very, very nice conversion percentage there of 21%. Anything at 20% or more, I think, is very impressive. And of course, Red Luffy here, the star of the show, only 7 players taking Red Luffy, but as a result, the fact that 2 of them made it in drives this conversion percentage way up. And I think this is just a sort of indication, or like a sanity check, that, hey, this deck is really good. When you see conversion percentages like this, it tells you that this deck is really underrepresented. That's what something like this tells you. And I think that's unsurprising. I think players are finally starting to realize that Zoro is not the move, and I imagine in Treasure Cups we'll be seeing a lot more Luffy than Zoro, but who's to say? Let's now, that we've discussed this, go to quickly discuss the winning lists. So this was the first place lore deck. Let's go ahead and move this over here a little bit. So we can see, I think this is really, really standard, actually. I think this is, if I had to give someone a lore deck to just pick up and play and just like kind of figure it out, it would basically be exactly this list. The one of Nico Robin is the only one of, everything else is at 3 or 4. Everything else is just something you absolutely need. You know, it's playing the Nekomamushis over the Izos. I know a lot of people are going to complain about that because I've gotten a lot of comments like that on my deck profile. It really comes down to whether you value that 2k counter over it being cheaper, and because Lore is a deck where you really need to set up early and fast, personally, I tend to value that it being cheaper, but I also played both Ezo and Cat Viper in my list, so I think there is that to consider. But yeah, overall, I think this is a very solid list. I would obviously happily play this. I think it's really good. And I imagine if he'd been playing killers, he would have had an easier time against Law. But the deck has a relatively easy time against Zoro. Sorry, but the deck has a relatively easy time against it anyway, as you can see by the fact it did so well. In second place, we have this purple Kaido list. And again, nothing absolutely, earth-shattering in what we're seeing here. Outside of the fact that it's not actually playing a super high quantity of cheap blockers. And I think the reason for this is understood that, look, you're weak to rush, and fundamentally every deck kind of outs all your cheap stuff. Your really good blockers are the ones that are at 4 and at 5. So that's why this deck plays more Black Maria. That's why this deck plays Queen. Babanuki is an incredibly efficient tool. It really lets you just build a nice large board early, which is really, really valuable. Overall, I think the Who's Who's is a no-brainer here for this meta. You definitely need to see it. The Brachia Bomber, a nice little inclusion. Personally, I understand why people don't like it. I think it is really good. Yes, the ramp isn't really worth anything, but the fact that it's killing a 6 cost or lower is so much of the game. Nuka Law or something. It's so good. I really like it. Overall, I think, as I said, this is a fantastic list. I am not surprised it did well. And fundamentally, what we've seen here is a Kaido player knows what they're doing, and also got lucky enough to just see their bits. Because Kaido, I think, if it plays everything on curve, it's just the best deck in the game. And this guy managed to do that, so hats off to him. Then we got the green kid list here. And I think this is, again, one of the most absolute bog-standard kid lists you can play. Notice the 3 of Basil Hawkins. That's because he doesn't like to lose the mirror. And I imagine that came in very, very handy. There are other cards I also like playing for the mirror, but this was probably more than enough. We got basically everything that matters here, right? You can see, the core is very solid. The 3 Okiku might throw some people. Personally, I think that's fine. You are going to see it with 4 more copies of Momonosuke. It's very searchable. It's also an absolute magnet for any kind of removal. So you do have to accept that it might just die very quickly, but it's very, very bricky. You do not want to see more than 1 or 2 max in a game. You really don't want to be seeing more than that. I like the killer. Law, I've started to grow on me in Green Kid. I really didn't like it before. Now I'm a little bit more okay on it, especially when you're doing things like bouncing killers, bouncing Ezos, or bouncing Cat Vipers to reuse their abilities, or bouncing Rhizos, or bouncing Okikus to basically reactivate them so they can't be attacked. So I think overall it's a very solid, very standard kid list here. There's really nothing to complain about. There's a lot of personal preference in this game, and I think I'm not surprised this list did well. I think its fundamentals are very good. Finally, we have a red Luffy deck here. Red green Law. Red Luffy, I was staring at green cards. A 4th place red green Law here, and this is a little bit spicier than the previous list. What are the changes? Well, we can see 1 less Momonosuke, and that has been turned into a Sanji, and that's it. That's all the spice. The lists are basically identical. The only difference, of course, being that one of Sanji. And I actually like this idea of chucking in a Sanji. We know it's very, very searchable thanks to Nami, and you're going to be able to use multiple Namis per game, so you can absolutely find it. And it's just a good card, Slam it down for 2, chuck a couple dons on it, get a little Russia, and then you can bounce it back to hand, play a Law, bounce something else, play the Sanji again, don up the Sanji again, spring again. Can be a very, very nice combo. And then you don't really care if it dies because it's absolutely done its work, and your opponent is probably going to clear it, but that's essentially acting like a blocker after its attack. So I think that's actually a really, really nice tech, which I might consider including. But yeah, overall, I think these are absolutely excellent lists, and if you are looking for a place to start, personally, they're not the same as mine. They are similar in a lot of ways, but there are a few different tech choices, and I think that's it's really depending on the meta you are building for. There is a lot of blue in the UK meta, or certainly there was. There's less nowadays. But anyway, that is what goes to show that I think if you just wanted to hand someone a deck and be like, okay, you want to give this a go? Here, use this. This is exactly what I would do. I'd use one of these lists, and certainly there are plenty of lists available for the top 16. So for basically pretty much every single viable deck in the game, outside of Blue Doffy, which I do think is viable as much as I dunk on it. It's available there, so I would really go and give this a look. But that is it for this video. If you found this informative, helpful, enjoyable, please do like it, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content. I am this close to 2,000 subscribers. Like, oh my god, so close. Please get me over that barrier. I'm gonna have to think of some way to celebrate it. If you've got any ideas, let me know in the comment section down below. How do I celebrate 2K? I'm definitely running out. I have no ideas. I need assistance. I need help. But that is it for this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Cheers.